That's it. Whew. I thought the blue bar wasn't going to come on then. Anyway, good evening, everybody in the chat room. Mwah, to our chat room. Today is Monday, the 12th of November, 2018. We have Patricia here and we have Angel here. AngelGizaPyramids.com. Hello, Angel. Patricia. Angel, are you there? No, we were just talking to each other. Angel, Flat Earth calling Angel. Can you hear me?
Hey, how about now?
Yeah, that's it. We can hear you.
Okay, yeah, I'm here. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's been a while, Angel. I know I think we've had one hangout since you've moved, but you moved.
Yes, I'm now on the East Coast. So actually it's 4 o'clock here instead of 1 o'clock, but that's okay. I was able to do the calculations myself.
Yeah, one of the last times we spoke to you, you had to throw out your NASA stuff, didn't you?
Well, it really you know, I've had a great awakening in the past like 2 years, and you know, it's kind of like having it just bothers me that the brainwashing that I had fallen into.
Well, the things you believed. Yeah, you showed us your collection, didn't you?
Yep.
You had quite a big collection of NASA stuff, didn't you? Actually,
I did. I had quite unique stuff. I was really not quite as crazy as that was that vintage space lady that is always on doing pumping NASA, but I was really on the NASA bandwagon.
a lot of people were, and I used to think, oh look, another space mission or whatever it was. And don't forget, we're the generation that they showed us we went to the moon.
And do the other stuff. To go to the moon and do the other stuff.
Yeah. Oh, so on Mars and stuff. The generation they told us that.
Well, no, that was Kennedy in his statement. He said, we're going to go to the moon and do the other stuff.
Ah. And what was the other stuff then?
Well, we don't really know because he got shot in the head.
Oh, right, yeah. Maybe tell us the truth, because the other stuff was we never went. Anyway, we very much appreciate you and your wisdom to explain to people. Angel would love to build the Giza complex, wouldn't you?
Yes, I would. I'd like to show and demonstrate that it can function as a machine, as opposed to being some, mausoleum or tomb or whatever the current theory is.
We were talking about this just before we came online, but the thing that really amazes me is that I never knew till you that the pyramids were on different levels, those three. And in fact, now you did send me something about the fourth one, which I sent you months ago as well. But they're all on different levels, but they match up. Now, I didn't know that till you.
Well, it's one of those, they don't really a lot of facts about the whole plateau and structure. And, it's, as I've been trying to recreate the whole plateau and get a feel for the whole area, that it's something that when you look at the topography, there are maps that show elevations and stuff that you can visually see that the bases are each at a different elevation, and hence the internal guts are actually all at the same elevation.
Hey, Angel, you say one of them's positive, one of them's negative, one of them's neutral. So if there was a fourth pyramid, what would that have been?
Well, actually, the way the photo I sent you, or the image that I sent you, you can see that it is actually, or could be, because that was a drawing that you were showing, not a picture. could have been the smaller pyramid next to the third largest pyramid on the structure. And when you're physically there on the plateau, I mean that those would be the four largest things on the structure. So of course you would draw them, you draw what you see.
Right. So what would it have been then if one of them's positive, one of them's negative, one of them's neutral? What would that one have been?
Well, the third one is more like the control. You can refer to it as neutral, but it's the control. And there is three pyramids just to the south of it, and that would allow the static electricity, which would be ambiently built up on it, to still ground, but at a controlled rate. And that is what I believe the three pyramids are, is allowing that static to dissipate to ground, but at a controlled rate. And that would, I mean, it's all quarantining and maintaining the static electric bubbles that are really around everything. I mean, I'm sure you've had a dry day where you pulled laundry out of the dryer and you get like little sparks, eh?
Hmm.
I mean, static electricity exists whether, we know about it or not. You can't say that somebody in the, 0800s didn't know about static electricity. That's great and wonderful. It still existed.
So what's the height difference between 1, 2, and 3?
The largest, physically largest of the structures, the one that they refer to as the Great Giza Pyramid, is currently 451-ish feet tall. The one next to it, from base to tip, is 481 feet tall. And then the third largest of the structures is 215 feet tall.
Cool, yeah. But they all match up somewhere along the way, don't they, for them to have worked? The reason they're at these different heights is for a reason.
Well, if, like I was saying, if you didn't know anything about static electricity or how to play with it or quarantine it or really what it was, it was just magic back in the day when you were, pitching hay and you would get a static electric field around you because you're pitching hay and there's friction and stuff. It exists, but you don't know what it is. But if you built a structure to quarantine it, like I believe these three structures were doing, each one of them, because of the way they're constructed, the static electricity would be at a different ambient level or a different voltage or a different amperage or whatever. Each one has a different potential. And it's the difference in the potential is when you short them together, the electrons move from point A to point B. They go from the highest concentration to the lowest concentration, or from the highest voltage to the lowest voltage, whichever way you want to look at it. And that's just.
This, when they were working, is this something that you would have seen like in the air, or is this something that they were just resonating?
Well, you can't really see static electricity, just like you can't really see heat. But one of the things that is said to be is that the pyramids glistened, or at least the Great Giza Pyramid glimmered. It had some sort of a sparkly appeal to it. And if you consider a large structure with static electricity, just like I'm sure you've seen sunlight on the floor of your house where the heater is next to the window and there's an updraft of heat and you can see ripples in the light on the floor. Have you ever noticed that?
Well, I'll have to look out for that now.
So you not notice that. If you just take sunlight and you were to put like a candle or well, no, candle would, because you'd have the smoke, it would be a bad example. But if you have a heater, you can see the ripples, the difference in the density of the air, making the sunlight seem to like dance, have ripples. And that is the effect that I feel is the reason why they say the Giza Pyramid seemed to glisten or shimmer or have that effect. I don't think there was, gold plated anything around it. I think it was just an effect from the static electricity. That is how somebody described it. And then we now apply what we want to think that shimmer was. Just like I'm applying what I think that shimmer would have been the static electricity ambiently captured on the outside of the structure, causing the air to have different densities, manipulate and bounce around, and would cause the sunlight to seem to be shimmering. I believe I didn't prepare a YouTube video to demonstrate it, but I'm sure at some point I can do something like that. I mean, it's just a fact of nature. It is, not any magical capstone or magical arc or anything magical. It is just facts of nature.
Do you think that they caused us problems in the end? Do you think that they helped cause a flooding or something like that, or something catastrophic?
I don't think they had anything like, they're not like HARP or something where they were really playing with the atmosphere or anything of that nature. I do not believe that. I could be wrong. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a physicist, but I think they seemed to have functioned for long enough that they left lots of scarring inside the structure. So I don't believe they were the cause of a catastrophic event.
Yeah, you were saying just before we came on about the fact that how could they ever have said that they were burial chambers, because nothing leads to them looking like they're burial chambers.
Well, when you look at the whole etymology of time, 150 years ago, we did not have some of the knowledge required to understand what was happening within the structure. I mean, up until the 1900s, and Tesla and Edison had their electric wars, we didn't even have electricity. The average person did not have electricity. So the concept of it, or how it works, or what it does, was, outside of the visual scope of anybody's mind. So of course they came up with stories and their opinions of what occurred. They were told they were in the backyard. Why not think they're tombs? And then they come up with stories on how one shaft points to one star and one shaft points to another star. And they just compound their thought with ludicrous intentions, as opposed to actually looking at the structure and just trying to visualize what the structure would have done as the structure sits. So you don't have to make very many modifications, just return it back to its original configuration. And the structure all by itself, to this very day, if we were to knock the antenna off the top of it, the 4-post antenna, it would start to collect static electricity. And then once in the 1800s, people will go up there and do Leyden jar experiments, and you could get sparks to fly from your fingertips and stuff like that. Your hair would stand up on end because you'd be standing on the surface of basically a large Van de Graaff generator. Nature will do that to this very day if we just returned it back to its original configuration, all by itself. We don't have to do anything. You can look at it as like a free energy collector if you want to. But
it is a bit strange, isn't it, when we think that we're so modern and so we've got so much technology and we can go to space and everything, and yet we don't actually quite understand how these things work. People like you have a really good idea because of your research, but we should know what they are.
Well, the average person is told in school, you're indoctrinated along with the ball, that they are tombs. And as long as you think they are tombs, whenever somebody starts talking to you, you mentally fall back to your indoctrination. You don't look at it with your own eyes. A lot of people, like when we had Chris Monk on here, and I was telling him about the configuration, he's like, well, I thought it did this, and I thought it did that, and I thought it had this. It's like, right, because that's what you were told in school. You were told a lie. You remember to perpetuate the lie, and you visualize the lie. But if you actually take a look at the structure, I mean, that's one of the reasons I put the GoPro video of people walking through the structure. It's the reasons I put the pictures. Look at the structure with your own eyes. Don't read the stories and get the mental image from the stories, because I can give you a mental image of Santa Claus all day long. It really exists. But if I give you the mental image of it, then that is how you perceive it.
Has your mind changed at all about when you first got into pyramids to what you think about what they are now? Has it changed for you, evolved, or what you thought at the beginning is what you think now?
I originally assumed that they were some sort of a water filtration or water. I knew they had to deal with water because of the scarring within it, but they I didn't know what to think it was. I really didn't think a power source was really the truth. I thought that was a red herring. Because I know honestly the story that Chris Dunn tells in his book is a complete fabrication. It requires modifications to the structure, and modifications to the structure means you're re-engineering the structure, not reverse engineering the structure. So that's not telling you what it did, it tells you what you, and that wasn't really my goal. My goal is to let the structure speak for itself, and I think it does if you pay attention to the structure. But in order to do that, you actually have to look at and pay attention to the structure, not the stories about the structure.
Sorry, I'm muted. I still find it
Not a problem.
incredible to think that we in the UK definitely at least have one fairly big pyramid, and hardly anybody here knows that it's a pyramid. Yeah, it's in the.
Oh,
It's
I
in
think
the.
your mounds are amazing.
Yeah, they're not maybe all
The-
as big. I think there seems to be lots of smaller ones, and it's really strange that all the places like Oxford College, they've got one. Marlborough College, little step pyramids there. So they're all over the place, the little step pyramids. And then I was actually looking at, I can't remember the castle now. I think this castle's built in the middle of another pyramid, which got like a road on the top. But I think that was another pyramid. It looks like the same size as Silbury Hill with the sort of moaty thing around it, just like, yeah, I just think it is, but who knows? But it looks, because it's quite a strong, tall a strong sort of lobbed off with a castle on it. So there's more here, and yet in England, you know, what happens? Like if suddenly it was on the news, England has pyramids. Can you imagine it? They don't really want any of this to get out, do they?
Yeah, I don't in any way give anyone the impression that there was at some point any civilization that had more intelligence than we do today, because that would really, that we are just relearning things that were already learned. We're not the smartest, monkeys on the planet or Earth, and they don't want to admit that. They really don't, even though there's they call out of place artifacts, things that don't make sense given the way we were told history happened.
Are you more under the bit where that these things were constructed where they were, and it wasn't great big slabs coming along, that they actually made the stones there? Or are
I
you
do
in?
believe they were fabricated. Much of the evidence, while people wish to dismiss it, shows that they were fabricated, not quarried and hauled across hundreds of miles.
Is that something you believed at the beginning, or is that something that you've just come to realize?
I feel I've come to realize that. I mean, I pay attention to the facts, not what I want the facts to be. And they found air bubbles within the rock. They found water infused within the rock, and they found the fine particulate metal particulates. And none of this would be true for an organic rock made in the bowels of the earth under hundreds of degrees and thousands of pounds of pressure.
So what about the big pieces of stone we see cut up? They were just for obelisks and things like that.
Well, now obelisks and pyramids could be two different things, and some of the obelisks are cut out. I mean, you can see even the what the Moabi or whatever it is that are on Easter Island. They have half cut statues cut out of the ground where you can see where they were quarrying them. I don't want to, just because I say the pyramids were fabricated, that doesn't mean everything else in the world was fabricated.
Mm. And are you sort of, because obviously you've been studying the pyramids for a long time. Are you a bit more like doesn't seem to be any instruments to show how they built the things or anything? Have you seen that bit's missing? Like these structures are here, and if anybody watches Wise Up channel, the structures are embedded in rock now.
Okay.
Or look,
You have a house, right?
yeah.
Do you have pictures within your house of how your house was built? Do you have a hammer lying on the front stoop
Yeah,
to
I mean,
show how it was hammered together?
generally, no like workshops found, is there? Or, I don't know. There's no,
Okay. Do you have a shed outside your house, which is where they milled the wood and cut the wood to build your house?
I
I mean,
understand
we're
that.
looking for something. We're looking for something for no reason. I mean, we don't have in your neighborhood a corner house that is where the wood is cut and the like you do at the lumber mill, which could be hundreds of miles away. Just look at current day. It isn't here current day. Why do we have to assume it was going to be there however long ago this was? We're looking for something to satisfy our mind, but it doesn't have to be there, because why would it have to be there? Look at the Hoover Dam. Okay, got a Hoover Dam out there. Well, I don't know if you know what it is, but it's in the middle of Nevada or Arizona, depending on which side of the river you're on. And they don't have. Well, actually, we do. We have a museum to tell people how it was built, so that's probably a bad example. But other dams, they don't really have, you know, how it was built in museums and things of that nature. They build it and then they go on to the next project. I mean, they don't have to leave the things there of how it was built.
Yeah, I suppose I meant more on things like you also noticed, didn't you, that some of these sort of pyramidy looking things were actually platforms, and they were obviously flying around in the air at the time.
I do believe that they had the art of flight. I'm not saying that it was like an airplane and a wing. It could have been a dirigible, like a zeppelin or a hot air balloon.
And all that obviously got taken away or destroyed, didn't it, over time? It's almost as if
Well,
we don't believe in nuclear bombs anymore or how they've portrayed them to us, but it seems as if something like, well, how in our mind, how they've told us it would happen, something like that's happened to us. There's so much to be destroyed, but bits to be left. It could have been those electrical arkings. Remember that? We did electrical arkings, and you wouldn't want to be in one of those. It vaporizes everything.
yep.
I just wondered whether too many pyramids were causing that, whether they caused something. I mean, we don't even know still if they were good or bad, do we?
Um, well, anything can be used for good or bad. I mean, a hammer, is it good or bad? It depends on if somebody's hitting a nail to build your house or hitting somebody over the head.
I just remember Robert Kidner saying, because he lives near quite a few in Mexico, and he was just saying that some of the pyramids there, you could tell they had horrible feelings to them, and other pyramids weren't like that. Felt like some of them
Well,
had horrible gargoyles on them of death and things, and didn't have good
I, I
feelings.
I do think some things at some points have been repurposed, but then again, some of those the images are actually built into the structure, and I think that was part of the original configuration. And not all pyramids. You can't just say because one pyramid did one thing that all pyramids did the same thing. Just because something is a pyramid shape doesn't mean that it's to do the same thing. My focus was the ones on the Giza Plateau, not I'm not applying the ones on the Giza Plateau to any other pyramids with the exception of maybe the Bosnian pyramid.
So what made you like them the most then?
Because they're the most photographed. It's the last remaining seven wonders of the world. It's has a lot of mystery and intrigue behind it, and I really didn't like the stories I was being told about it. They it's like when somebody tells you about 9/11 and they tell you about how two planes brought down three buildings. Something doesn't sit well when you find out that they fell with free fall speed, just like controlled demolitions, and there was sounds of explosions, all this other stuff. It just doesn't sit well. You start to dismiss the original theory, the original story, and you start to look at the facts and fabricate your own thoughts. Of course, a lot of people don't want to fabricate their own thoughts because it means that something really horrible and evil occurred, but the facts speak for themselves. And I really think that people don't like to follow the facts. They like to follow the story. They like a quick little sound bit in the story. They just, oh yeah, it said that a bunch of people were shot at some dance bar the other day. Okay, but the video shows an empty dance hall with plywood on the window on the far side. Why would there already be plywood if it was the video from the time of the shooting and the plywood was applied after the windows were shot out? Something doesn't seem right. The story has holes in it.
So, what about the Bosnian pyramids, by the way? What are they to you? Because there's a load more of them, isn't there?
Well, there's about 3 or 4 Bosnian pyramids, and really the people that are currently playing with it are exploring the understructure, the conduit system beneath the pyramids. They haven't actually gotten into the pyramids themselves. And I'm hoping when they do, they explore it slowly and they take lots of pictures so we don't do damage to it like we did the Giza pyramids, which we can't go back and prove what the original configuration was because damage was done to the structure. Now, of course, luckily, in the middle of the Nazca lines, no matter what Brendan Forrester says, those Nazca lines are blueprints. And I believe they are blueprints for these structures because the pieces tie together. If you look at the structure and then you look at the blueprints, they are the blueprints for that structure.
Okay. So you don't agree with Brian Forrester on that one then? We've got him coming on in a few weeks.
That's fine. He dismissed that they are blueprints. But, I mean, do you have the ability to do screen shares and stuff?
I didn't come through on the right thing. I didn't come through on Google.
Then don't worry about it. I'm on an iPhone, so I can't do it right now either. But there is a video on one of my playlists. I think it's the one that says, I think it's recommended viewing. And on there, it's a gentleman named Thomas who happens to be over there in the UK with you guys. And he has taken a lot of time, just like the video I showed you guys a couple of weeks ago, JD, which he was working with, has done extensive recreation of the Nazca lines on a digital page. And when you look at them, they are very clearly blueprints. They are not, you know what a blueprint looks like and you look at them, they are blueprints.
What do they tell you then? Because they look like animals to me. So what do they tell you?
Well, some of them look like animals. You're not looking at all of them. This is why it would be much easier if you could. Well, can Patricia do screen share?
Oh no, she said that she's got the telly. She's going to stay quiet.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm saying. You need to look at them. You need to look at them and then tell me what you think. You've seen some of them. Just like you've gotten pictures of the Giza pyramid and you were told it was tombs, and they showed you photos of certain sections of the pyramid that they can fabricate in your mind that it's a tomb. But when you look at the rest of the structure and the pieces that don't fit the tomb theory falls apart. And that's why I'm saying you really need to look at the lines in Nazca. You need to actually look at them before you dismiss that they're a blueprint, because it's pretty obvious that they are a blueprint.
And is there four of them?
There are monkeys, there are spiders, there are birds, there are other things, but that is one area. And the Nazca lines actually stretch practically up the whole coast of South America. They are not just quarantined to the country or city of Nazca.
Okay, so what would the fourth pyramid at Giza mean then? What would that mean then? If it
well, there are more than four. There are six.
Six?
Yeah. Have you if you could go to Google Maps and do a screen share, there are three smaller pyramids next to the one larger pyramid, smaller pyramids next to the third smallest pyramid. That would be six. But they don't talk about the other ones because, number one, they don't fit the tomb theory. Number two, they don't mean anything. And number three, unless you're physically there, you know, they don't write about them in the book. Therefore, you don't know about them.
Oh, right. The other pyramids you're talking about are much smaller. Yeah, they're like little step pyramids in a row. Those ones.
Yes, and that would when you look at the Giza Plateau itself, the south of the smallest pyramid, only one of those three pyramids is actually a fully shaped, what we refer to as a pyramid. The other ones are all like chopped and truncated. Now, people like to say that they were damaged and ruined, but I think they are what they have always been. And you have to look at it as what nature would be doing, because nature will do what nature wants to do. No matter what you want it to do, nature will do what nature wants to do. It will find the path of least resistance, and static electricity will dissipate to ground. That's what it will do. Either dissipate to ground or dissipate to a higher altitude. One way or the other. It's going to dissipate one way or the other. Nature abhors a vacuum, and it will take wherever there's an abundance and radiate it out to where there's not an abundance. That's what nature does.
Is that the Giza ones? Are they just the power station basically for that area, or would it have done much more? Because there seems to be pyramids everywhere.
Well, I do not know, honestly, at this point, if it was power being utilized on site or power being dispersed. That is why I need to model the system. I don't want to really completely come up with wild ideas. I've bit myself in the foot several times with that. I would like to model the structure, talk to people who are physicists and understand static electricity and what it would do and how it would do, have somebody who has degrees after their name say, well, you know, if you had a Van de Graaff generator and you touched it, your hair would stand on end. Okay, perfect. That's just black and white science. So why does it do that? Well, that's because the static electricity dissipates up your arm and to your hair and is, you know, trying to branch out and dissipate out to everything around it, because that's what it does. Great and wonderful. Okay, this is just black and white science 101, physical science 101. I don't want to make up something. I want to see what the structure does.
But in your heart, what do you think it's going to do?
At this point, I don't know if the energy is being utilized locally or if it's you know, distributed out. I don't know. I would like to model it. I don't want it in my heart to do something. I want it to do what nature will make it do. Have a preconceived idea and then mold my story to fit my preconceived idea. I want the structure itself. That is why I want to model it. I want to see what it does. Like are you familiar with a Lord Kelvin drip generator? Please say yes.
Yes.
The guy was from over there in England. It was Lord Kelvin. He's
Yeah.
he was so famous that we named the Kelvin temperature after him. You know, yet Celsius, Fahrenheit, and Kelvin. But he developed or demonstrated or modeled what's called a Lord Kelvin drip generator, and it basically is a way to get a spark of electricity out of water. Well, when you look at the contraption as it is, and you can pull it up on YouTube or Google or whatever, and you see it's very simple design. And if you sit there and you could say, well, what I want it to do is make the water jump across the atmosphere, or I want it to polarize the water, I want it to change the pH value. No, it will do what nature makes it do, and the end result is what nature decides. It's the same thing with this structure. I don't want it to do something. I does.
Hmm. It does sort of, when you see those pyramids like that in from the air, start looking a bit like a sort of circuit board, doesn't it?
It does, and the conduits underneath are like traces, which is why I do think it had power distribution. But that's what I feel. That's not what I know. Again, why I want to model it. We have the plateau there at our disposal. We can send little, crawly robots and stuff through the act out and figure out what goes from where to where. This is within the realm of possibility. If not this decade, next decade, somebody somewhere is going to get, some little drone and fly it through there, and it's going to remember the path it took with cookie crumbs, and hence we can take that and turn it into a map. Just like when they had the Fitbits everyone was wearing, and because of it was mapping out where everyone was walking, they found out that there was a base down in Antarctica, and you can see all the hallways and where everyone was going because they were walking through doors and through rooms and down hallways. So you see the whole map of the whole structure. Just like if people in the Pentagon were wearing Fitbits, you get a map of the whole Pentagon, where all the doors are, where all the windows are. Well, you wouldn't get windows, people don't walk through windows, but where all the doors are and all the hallways and the cafeteria where everyone comes together and where the bathrooms are. You would be able to figure out by watching like the little cookie crumbs where everyone was walking. This can be the same type thing can be done with the conduits under the Giza plateau. If somebody wants to take the time to do it, but they don't because they think it's a tomb. And as long as they think it's a tomb, why bother trying to map it?
It's not just that, is it? They like making money out of them the way that they are.
Well, true. They have a cash cow of tourism, and they really don't want to rock the boat, just to be honest.
Hmm. Do you know that I had an idea? I just want you to listen to me. I might have even told you an email. I can't remember now. But I was watching this video came up about this ancient river. I think it was in America. And suddenly these great big sinkholes, like a big sinkhole and a smaller sinkhole, and then a smaller sinkhole appeared. And for the split second, I just saw the Giza pyramids. And I was wondering, you don't think that they never had to dig the holes because there was already sinkholes there, and that's why they could build them over the top. They already had the hole.
What hole?
Well, they built them on top of, they were sinkholes like this river in America. These great big sinkholes, and the river had gone down the sinkholes. But you imagine if they'd been there for a while, so they knew that they weren't really moving. Then they've got these big holes. They could build a pyramid on top. The hole's already there. It's just an idea.
Except for that, the whole understructure underneath the Giza plateau is littered with conduits. If there were sinkholes, these conduits would be like cracking and breaking and current day infrastructure.
It's just an idea when I saw these sinkholes. And also, something else, it was only through watching, because I think we were on a hangout and you showed us the Giza plateau and you were walking around, that a lot of people don't realize that there are some huge, great big stones on the ground, and they go sort of under the pyramid. They meet the pyramid.
Yeah, there is a like base I currently feel that that would be the bottom of the moat that was outside of the pyramid. And, just like how if you have a river or something, well, at least here in the States, we cement the bottom of our rivers. I don't know why. We don't like the water to seep into the ground because, we don't want it to hydrate the ground or anything. But which is part of the reason we have the drought, because we take all our rainwater and push it right out to the ocean, out of sight, out of mind, and then worry about it later when we have nothing to feed our plants. But that's okay because we ship all our water down from Northern California. Well, I say I'm not in California anymore, but it really bothered me that we were fed a farce about having water shortages when we waste water every chance we get.
Hmm. So do you think that there was no town there originally, or do you think that town's only built up really because of tourism?
I mean, around the Giza Plateau?
Or do you think it was always like that?
That I don't know. I don't really pay attention to the area outside the structure, so I don't really care or pay attention to the history of like what was there and who built it and what, who lived where, because that's going to be more current day stuff, and these structures were, I think, thousands of years ago, and probably multiple people have come in and out of the area.
So what do you think the sphinxes were then?
Well, I know there's potentially a second one that they want to think about, but currently I only know and believe in one. And exactly what it represents, I'm not 100% sure, but I do kind of feel that it fits in a solar calendar bit, and they were trying to relay a time period or a kind of give it a place in time. But I really can't think for them. I it is there. It physically exists, and I don't mind it being part of the model. But the rationale behind it's like if somebody 200 years, 300, 400, 500 years ago comes by and says, "Why is there a lady in the New York Star Harbor holding a torch with the spikes coming out of her head?" It's well, they somebody can come up with the weirdest answer as to why. But unless you were there at the time it was done, you don't really know why. But you can say, yes, it is there. It is there. I acknowledge it's there. Why is it there? I don't know. We'll come back to that. But let's just go with the fact it's there.
Because there are tunnels underneath, aren't they? Which they don't really talk about that much. And I remember we were looking at them. Like there's tunnels right
There are
there.
also tunnels throughout it. And when you, there are pictures of the Huascais, Ahi Hawas, going in and out of the tunnel that's by the leg, the back leg, and there's also a hole in the top. And when you look inside of it, it kind of looks like it's put together like one of those like wooden puzzle pieces where they all snap together and then one piece comes down to hold it all in place. But yet they like to tell us it was quarried out of one large rock. But on the inside, you can see breaks in the rock, just like you can in the pyramid itself. So, it's you kind of have to pay attention to the facts, not the story.
Hmm. So what on the plateau itself, there's like lots of little sort of, well, I don't know what they are. They're like little caverns, aren't they? They're all still look like they're on a circuit board. They're quite sort of battery sort of shape, or rectangle things.
I believe what you're talking about is the things they call mastabas.
Yeah, I don't think you want to go down there very much. Loads of people pee in them, don't they, or something?
Right. They
There's
seem to
hundreds.
have a conduit that goes down like half a dozen or a couple 100 feet, maybe 30, 40 feet, and potentially dead end. And you're right, people use them for disposal of refuge and stuff. Um, Again, I don't. I want to put the plateau back into shape and see what they do. It's like if somebody was sitting in a window of an airplane and they look outside and they see those little antennas sticking off the back of the wing, And they say, what are those for? Well, if the plane is at rest, not flying, you have no idea what it's for. And unless to wind turbulence and how it's working, you still have no idea what it's for. Visually, you can't really see wind turbulence. You can see its damage, but you really can't see it. But they have learned by putting those little antennas off the back of it, it helps the wind come off the wing easier, even though they're just little antennas. Now, you don't know this unless you do lots of wind tunnel experiments and you throw the smoke over the wing and you actually look at the turbulence of the wind. So, yes, they exist. I admit they exist. What they do, I don't know until we model the system, and it may speak for itself when we find out, hey, this helps to do this, or it may have a function, but you don't know until you model it. The way the ends of the wings nowadays, they have them swoop up. They put a little, the last 3 feet, they kind of swoop up to a 90-degree angle. Why do they do that? Well, they do it because of the way it affects the wind turbulence. Again, sitting in an airport staring at the airplane, it doesn't really make sense. Flying, it doesn't really make sense because you can't see the wind turbulence. But when you model it, it will speak for itself. It helps break the wind turbulence and smoothen it out. But you don't know this unless you have actually modeled it and look at what nature is doing and how it affects nature. So I don't want to come up and force an idea. I'd like to model the whole system and let the system try to speak for itself. It may reveal its own answers if we model the system. If we let the system run the way I suggest it should run and let the model speak for itself.
Is that something that you think, like, you couldn't build the same thing again as size it is, but is it something that you might
Well,
do on the computer? Like, I do a computer simulation?
well, yes, you could do computer modeling. And the one thing about computer modeling is you have to model the physical structure. You can't model the story. You can't model, if you want to build a big pyramid and put a golden capstone on it and put, shiny side on it, well, that's fine. But you're not modeling the structure. You're modeling the story, or you're modeling what you've been told the structure should have been if the king had finished it. Again, that's the one problem I have is most everyone who throws a cat at me, their file is what they want the structure to be, not what the structure is. And I point out, well, this is this and this. Like, go on.
Angel, I've watched programs where these people have taken like a decade, 20 years to work out what the pyramids are, and they never worked out like you said. Oh, dearie me, all that effort, and they're still in the wrong place.
Well, that's because most of the time they're modeling a story, or they don't have their model true to the configuration of the structure. So airplane, and I built it with straight wings without the winglets and without the fins on the end, and then I model that, I'm modeling something different than what was presented to me. That is part of the problem I have is when people throw something at me, they're not throwing me what physically exists. And when I try to point out to them the discrepancies between the physical structure and the model, they come back with, oh, well, the king said this, and well, this was this way because, this star was in alignment with it. I'm like, I don't want excuses. I want you to model the structure. Otherwise, the results you're going to get are not the same results you're going to get from that structure because you're not modeling that structure. But, people think it's a tomb, and or they want to add or append pieces to fit their own mental preconceived idea of what they wish the structure would do. And again, that's not modeling the structure. That's modeling their mental image of the structure or the story they were told about the structure. And it's extraordinarily frustrating, especially when I try to explain this to people and they don't want to hear me because they already have their preconceived idea that it was a landing pad for a spaceship or that it was a place to store hay during the winter. I mean, I've heard the weirdest things. And I'm like, Where do you get this from? Well, because where else would they put the hay? Okay, you know.
Oh, is that to do with those, you know, the things in further down that have got lids on, and they thought that they were storage bins?
I think that they are actually cells for a battery. Again, we did not know of batteries and electricity up until the early 1800s. Well, maybe late 1700s, but it wasn't commonplace until the 1900s. And you know, you look at things like the Baghdad battery that they had in museums and everything until it was kind of proven to show that it was a battery, and then they hide them in the basement because they don't want to admit that prior civilizations had the, because then Benjamin Franklin didn't invent it, did he?
No, and if you, I don't know whether you do, but we follow Martin Leakey, who is bringing up basically that, you know, they're lying to us completely, that the people even 300 years ago had electricity, but each time there's some kind of mud flood, destroys everything, and we're probably the generation who has survived from the last mud flood.
I'll go with that. I believe there have been several life extinction events on the earth.
So basically, all these big buildings in America, you know, they were already there. And, you know, like there's
All of them?
hundreds of feet underneath the ground. And it's a bit like some places you don't even know how they got built.
Oh,
Just,
yeah,
they've
we have.
always been. Carry on.
What was it? France. In France, there's a system underneath the city that no one can really know when it was built. The history doesn't say when it was built. It was just there, and they built on top of it.
Yeah, but it's happening in New York, England, everywhere really. And so they're lying again. It's almost as if we're on a film set, an old film set.
I'm not going to argue that. You know, I can point out dozens of places that our taught indoctrination system improperly educates us.
As well as pyramids, which is your biggest love, your other one is 9/11, isn't it? You like talking about 9/11. Well, you hate it, but
I think anybody who actually looks at 9/11 and pays attention to the facts and lets the facts tell the story, not the story make the facts, that it is pretty obvious what occurred. But again, it's kind of like if you know, somebody tells you that your mother's a prostitute murderer, you don't want to believe it. You have cognitive dissonance. You don't want to believe it. Hence, you only focus on, you know, what mentally fits your mind and makes your mind happy. And you dismiss solid evidence that doesn't fit your narrative. And it is, you know, it's a psychological thing. It's called cognitive dissonance. Also has to deal with what they call the Overton window and normalcy bias and things of that nature. They all fit into the same big bubble, and it's that you know, if you're walking to school one day and somebody flies by with a jetpack, you'll be like, what was that? But you don't know what a jetpack is, and you say like, well, that I don't know what it was. It was just an unflied flying person. Okay, and you know, you don't say, hey, jetpacks exist, because you don't know what a jetpack is yet.
I think I know what you meant earlier on as well, when you were talking about, like, we can't talk that much about those things because you know what YouTube's like. But it's a bit like all the narratives already worked out and they're pretending it's news, but it wasn't. It was made up to be the news. And that's what they've done repeatedly to us, even about 9/11 and the whole thing. It's like trying to cover something up. It's so obvious because they don't talk about it. You know, we talk about the First World War, the Second World War, and even find out that those are lies as well. But they talk about certain things, but nobody wants to talk about 9/11, do they? Or other things. You know, there's catastrophic things that affected our world. And yeah, they don't want to talk about it. And if you get into 9/11, all you've got to do is go and find Pilots for Truth. Oh, dear.
Yeah, AE 9/11 is pretty solid with the facts, and they just throw facts at you. And again, you should follow the facts and let the facts paint the picture of the story. But a lot of people have already been given the story, the narrative, and when you give them a fact that doesn't fit the narrative that they mentally believe, they dismiss the fact. It's
I just find it's really strange. Just this is a slight change of subject, but on the press side of things, that in that last hurricane, you had these news reporters pretending that they were knee deep or whatever it was, or waist deep in water and wind, and they weren't. And it's like no one still says anything. I just find.
Are we talking about Matthew that came off the Gulf Coast?
I can't
About
remember
3-4 months ago.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, 2-3 months ago.
Yeah, the one that attacked a military base and flipped over some of our was it F-18s or whatever it was, or F-35s or something like that. Some of the airplanes that have had bugs and computer issues with them. They're like the redheaded stepchild of our Air Force. But luckily, this hurricane went through there and destroyed, I think, 80% of the inventory we had. So now we don't have to worry about it because, they just have to buy new and different airplanes. So all the problems that we had with those airplanes have out of sight, out of mind. Not only that, but there's a great video that shows the water buoys, the things that measure temperature and elevation, all that. And they show that this hurricane didn't come from across the water. It appeared, it attacked, and then it dissipated. It didn't move very far off the base except for one or two bordering cities. It was, I believe this was a controlled event with some weather manipulation, because hurricanes don't just appear and disappear. Tornadoes do. Hurricanes don't.
Just changing the subject again, because we know what your subject is, it's pyramids. But what do you make of the fires right now? I mean, they look pretty bad, but then they showed me this picture of this house completely had it all on fire. It had green trees around it, which weren't on fire, but the house was on fire. I thought, well, where's the rest of the fire?
Next time you're on YouTube, go ahead and type in, I think it's 53 kilowatt laser. We developed it, we being my military, developed it, I think it was June or July of 2015, 2016, whichever year. In October of that year, we had the horrible fires where houses were melted and cars were melted, but trees stood next door to them. Same scenario. We are using our current play toys to convince people to move.
Oh, right. It's so horrible to hear of so many fires. I mean, maybe it was like that, but then they pick a year where they keep repeating the fires, and it makes it look, whoa, America's just on fire all the time. It just feels like that.
Well, I mean, California does have a lot of fires. It's a desert. If we didn't water it, if we didn't bring the water down from Northern California, and if we actually let the water soak into the ground instead of pushing it out into the ocean, it wouldn't be quite as bad as it is. But it's currently a desert, and people do throw cigarette butts out, and they do have forest fires, and they do spark up. And thanks to our past President Obama, he cut back on the Forestry Service, and they were not cutting in the underbrush, and they were not doing what they call controlled burns and back burns, which left a lot of kindling and fallen trees in the forest, so that when a fire comes, there's tons and tons of kindling, which makes the fire much worse than it could have been and should have been if we did some of the maintenance. A forest next to your house, you kind of, if a tree falls, you pull the tree out of there. You don't let it fall and become firewood for the next forest fire that comes by. Except for if you want problems, if you want to have problems, so that you get federal emergency funding from FEMA, which then can be deployed to buy new pools and houses, or girlfriend or something. But it's they a lot of the things are fabricated. They make a problem, or they allow a problem to occur, and they don't prepare for it so that it's worse when it does occur, because they really like emergency funding. They really like to tell people to get out of their houses. They really like control, and fear is the best way to control somebody.
Yeah, it seems that way, isn't it? Always fear, 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 fear. Everything's about fear. But it does seem really strange that some of these fires are happening from the inside out, isn't it, really? I'm not saying all
It
of
is.
them.
No, not all of them. Some of them are real forest fires. Some people, are out there in the woods, and they don't put their embers out, or they throw a cigarette out the window, or lightning does strike, and things do occur naturally. But if you don't wish the fire, well, here's the thing: in nature, forest fires are a pruning technique. In fact, some trees, the seeds don't germinate until after there's been a forest fire. And this will allow that seed to fall and wait until there's a forest fire so that that seed can germinate, and then it knows it gets sunlight because all the trees have been burnt down. Nature did this on its own. God is a mysterious guy or girl, I don't care, a mysterious entity. And it has done some amazing and wonderful things, which we dismiss. I think it's very intelligent design. I but we don't. We're not taught these things. We're the little quirky things that nature does that don't make sense until you understand why nature does it. Like, why doesn't certain trees, their seeds germinate until after a forest fire? Well, if the seed germinated underneath the canopy of the forest, it would never get sunlight and it would die. If it waits until after a forest fire, the canopy isn't there, and it can regrow the forest. Nature did that all by itself, or God, whichever way. It is a fact that nature does it, and we dismiss that, and that bothers me, but it does. But other than nature doing its own rejuvenation thing, if you have a house next to a forest, you really don't want the once in a while so that you have to rebuild your house and a new person moves in. Nature does that. Nature's happy with that. But our current day, we build our house and we expect to own it for a couple of dozen years, not have it lost to a forest fire so somebody else can build a new house on your land. And you trim the trees and cut the bush and cut the trees back from your house, so if they do catch on fire, they don't catch your house on fire. You take preventative measures. If you neglect those preventative measures, then when there is a forest fire, but then if you had taken the preventive measures. And for the past decade, we have neglected to take preventative measures because I do believe that are you familiar with Agenda 21? All you have to do is know of the agenda, read the agenda. You don't have to believe that it's actually, going to be implemented. But if you know of the agenda and you see pieces of it coming to fruition, then you kind of have to admit that it's there, it's happening, it's real. The UN developed a plan, and they concreted it in 1992, and they are very happily implementing this plan. They really think it's the best thing since sliced cheese. I think it was actually 82, not 92. But they are implementing this plan because, well, they think they know better than we do. And who can yell at them? They're their own entity. They're a non-governmental governing agency.
That 5G, don't they?
I'm sorry, I cut you off. What?
They want us living inside the 5G.
They want us inside the 5G. They want us inside little controlled environments. They do not wish for human inhabitants to be outside. They want it to be like, what's that movie? The one where they battle all the time. I don't remember the name of it, but where everyone lives in their own little community, and there are forests between them, but those are like uninhabited areas. They want nature to regrow in the uninhabited areas. Really, all they care about is controlling the population. They don't going out into the woods and having your own kids that are taught the real life and come back to the city and say like, you guys are loony. You know, if you put the seed in the ground, it will grow. You have an apple, you eat the apple, you are happy. You don't have to buy it at a store. You can do these things on your own. You can be self-sufficient. Self-sufficient? No, then you're not a consumer. We need consumers. We need happy, ignorant consumers.
Yes, that's all they want, isn't it? Is consumers.
That is the marketing plan.
I think your mind changes. Was it before 9/11 like you knew everything was wrong, or was it really 9/11 then once you hit like flat earth, the pyramids and all that, then there's just no way back? Is it something that was years ago for you, or flat earthy side of things, or was it just
I'm going to
evolved?
say I toyed with the moon landings being fake, but it was really about I think 2007-ish when I was watching one of the 9/11 documentaries, and I learned of Building 7, and that was just like the clincher. I mean, I had seen Building 7 fall several dozen times, but whenever it was played on the news, they showed it as an example of controlled demolition. But they never, which they said, hey, look, it looks like controlled demolition. Yes, yes, yes. But that looks nothing like how the towers fell. And they were comparing Building 7 as a controlled demolition to look, the towers weren't controlled demolition because Building 7 fell differently. But what they never said is that Building 7 also fell on September 11th. I thought Building 7 was like a building in Las Vegas or something that was controlled demolition. But then when you found out that, or when I found out that Building 7 happened to fall on the same day as the other two buildings, and it's a perfect example of controlled demolition, you know, you have to accept that as a fact. And once you accept that as a fact, then the 9/11 theory doesn't hold water anymore.
Do you know what's really crazy is I think a lot of people do know about Building 7, but it's never really entered their mind to realizing what it was all about. They're still just concentrating on the Twin Towers. But that day, all the complex went, all 7 buildings.
Large parts of some of the other structures, but 5, 6,
and they had them all knocked down, really, didn't they? After that,
yeah, like I think like 6 had a big hole in the middle of it. Had physical structure left. You can still see pictures where there's physical structure. That is what a building should look like if like something fell on top of it, or excuse me, something of that nature. It shouldn't have gone straight to the ground. It shouldn't have been raised to the ground. It should have pieces sticking up out of it, because nature doesn't completely destroy something. You look at a house that's been burnt down, there's going to have a wall here, a chimney there.
oh yeah,
you know, it's
the
going to
average height, was it the height, what was left was the height of an ambulance, just above an ambulance. On the ground, that's what was left. So how could that be?
Yep.
120 stories down to just over an ambulance size.
Well, there's a patented controlled demolition technique. I think it's called Dietrich's, which I forget what it's short for, but basically it means demolishing and da 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 da, where the whole structure is turned into pieces as large as possible, but not too large to fit on the conveyance they wish to remove it from the site on. So they split the structure into pieces that will fit on the truck. Ooh, restarted your Windows, did you?
I was muted there. I couldn't get my mute button off. I think it's quite incredible that people don't realise that the Twin Towers, or that piece of land, is a piece of concrete. And actually nothing could really hit it because it would have cracked it and then it would have let the water in.
Well, the land goes down to what do they call it? Bedrock. But the bath is a big, I think it's like a wall that surrounds the where the Twin Towers once stood. and it did allow for the surface went all the way. They dug it down to bedrock and built a wall around it, and that is the bathtub. If that wasn't there, the Hudson River seepage, because the ground level, it's below the water level, the water would seep in and, yes, fill the bath. And people probably don't recognize that because they haven't looked at the whole way that the whole structure was configured. I mean, not a lot of people have dug into it as deep as they. Well, I shouldn't say they should. Our television shouldn't lie to us, so they shouldn't have to. But if they really want to know the truth, all they have to do is look at the configuration and the story that we were told and how the pieces don't fit. Things don't fit right together because the story is a fabrication of a preconceived idea, a preconceived cover story.
Don't forget, it was mentioned just in the chat room there that the BBC reported Building 7 had come down 45 minutes or whatever it was, 25 minutes before
23 minutes before it came down. Jane Stanway is there on
You're
TV.
aware of it?
Yes, I'm aware of it. Jane Stanway is there on TV saying the Solomon Brothers building has fallen. It seems to have collapsed due to fires that were raging in the building earlier that day. While the building is standing directly behind her. That may not be verbatim, but it's pretty close.
What I was going to tell you was someone in the UK, I can't actually remember his name, but you'd find him because he didn't pay his TV license here. And then he got taken to court, which is what he wanted. And he took loads of people there from 9/11 to the judge. And the judge actually admitted that with the evidence, how could the BBC, if it's an act of terrorism, how could the BBC have known 25 minutes before, whatever it was, 23 minutes? So there's something
because
wrong.
Reuters did a press release. They put the cover story out there ahead of time so that when the building fell, people would look at the telex at the time. The telexes came through, and they would look at the telex and see what the story was. Kind of like if trying to set a good example. If you wanted to burn down your neighbor's house, you could say, oh, look, there was a bolt of lightning that hit the house just before the house caught on fire. And you put out the story that a bolt of lightning hit the house and that's what caused the fire to happen. But what happens if you put the story out and your neighbor says, oh, my house burned down from a bolt of lightning? That's funny. They walk outside, turn around, and then their house catches on fire and burns down. The intention was that they wanted the cover story to be there so that when people said, oh, the building fell, they would read the telex, get an answer, regurgitate the answer, and be happy. But the problem is that the BBC reported it before the incident occurred.
Well, the good news about that is that the guy got the judge to agree that it is impossible what happened. So how could it wasn't an act of terrorism because the BBC knew. And basically the person said it was about 2014 he did this, basically to go to every police station with saying 9/11's a lie, blah, blah, blah.
Well, there's more. I think over in the UK there, because over here they keep getting it thrown out, but they said, look, here is a textbook description of a building that fell from fires alone. That is what the 9/11 report said, and what who was it? UL, Universal Listing, actually said. Their official stance was the building fell from fires alone, not boilers exploding or any explosions. It was or any pyrotechnics. It was from office fires alone. Now, armed with this knowledge, a couple of people went to the building commissions and said, look, well, if buildings, steel frame buildings, are going to fall from a standard office fire, we need to completely change our fire protection and our, evacuation and building codes. And they said, oh, we don't really have to change them. Well, why not? Well, because it really didn't fall that way. Can you say that again, please?
I think really we watched those ones where It had only just happened, and there's a guy out there going, basically, I know what happened. It was an aeroplane, it hit, and it went in, and it caused the structure to fail, and those kind of stories were given out. I think people didn't realize they were probably seeing a hologram planes. There was no planes. They saw hologram. If anybody saw anything, it was a hologram plane.
Well, I kind of actually currently believe that planes flew by and buzzed the building, but
I know what you
I
mean.
don't
They got
believe,
the planes to fly around. Yeah, I've seen those.
but I don't believe that a plane hit the building. I believe what we actually witnessed on broadcast television was a virtual simulation of planes hitting the building, and not physical planes hitting the building. I do believe the explosions occurred because there were pyrotechnics pre-stationed within the structure. In fact, there are great examples where you can see the plane hit the building, and then afterwards, the where the wing hit the building then falls out off the side of the building, where it wasn't perfectly timed right. It was good. It was good, but it wasn't perfect.
Mm. But they had time to do that, because when you watch the first footage of the second building, there is no aeroplane. Something the size of a helicopter, maybe, but no aeroplane. And yeah, someone's put Dr. Judy Woods, but a lot of people don't like her. They think that she's some agent of some kind. But
Well, I think Judy Woods.
that was there, but buildings and cars were burning with no heat. And the one thing I did remember that her saying was that a lot of the firemen afterwards complained that their shoes were like melting and stuff like that. But she said, but they weren't ever going to the doctor saying, hey, my feet have burnt. Their shoes were reacting because they were touching the ground that had been affected. So there's some other thing that was still reacting, and that's why their shoes were. Something else happened there. It's obvious.
I'm not quite sure she's controlled. I think she had an idea and she pushed it. But parts of her story, I don't feel the physical evidence agrees with. I'm not dismissing that we don't have focused energy weapons. That's kind of what a laser is. Uh, that's what HARP is. Um, so I do believe that the technology exists, and I think because she knew the technology exists, she applied it there. But I think there are other things that account for the scorched cars, which would be a dirty nuke.
But in Flat Earth, we don't sort of believe that they are real. It was obviously something else. It was something, but they're not. They're not real, are they? Like we thought they were, nuclear weapons. But
Well, I don't happen to have one in my backyard. I've never played with one.
Oh my goodness, my memory. I watched this Russian guy who reckoned that all these big buildings have, whatever you want to call them, nuclear detonators. They have to know how they're going to bring the buildings down before they go up. So
Yes, many buildings, the building code will require that when the building has reached its expiration of life, its life expectancy, that they are able to take it down, not that it's going to be an eyesore, or if there's ever damage to the building and it has to come down, that they have a way to take it down, not that it's going to fall over and like squish the buildings next to it. And there are also situations where
pretty sure that they did
there are also situations, yeah, like Building 7, where we have like level 5 and level 6 containment buildings, where let's say there's a biological entity and it escapes the containment vessel. They would much rather incinerate the building than let that biohazard escape and kill millions. Although nowadays they'd probably be happy to let it escape and kill millions and just say, oh, somebody left the door open.
They don't care very much about us, otherwise they wouldn't have staged all that to play a game, would they?
No. They don't really care about us. They just care what we think and how we act.
It's horrible when you've got to control the people like this and almost make a film in front of them. You're making a film, a situation that's not real. You've got news people there, soldiers there. You've got all this happening, and it was all fake.
Well, I I don't think all of it was fake. I have had the luxury of had been in the trade center, um, and I had been there the October after September 11th. So I saw the lack of the building. So I do believe that it something occurred, but not the story we have been fed. So it's not all a lie. Certain pieces of it are true. That there is truth behind the story. It's like, yes, dad came home. Yes, dad came home drunk, but yes, dad came home. Yeah, it's parts of it are left out. Parts of it are, dad came home in handcuffs and drunk. It's it's there is some truth, and then there is a cover story on top of it to hide the true truth. But you can't just have buildings disappear and not have some story. I mean, there is some truth to it. The buildings did disappear. I was in the buildings, and then the buildings weren't there. They did disappear, but it's not all a lie. It's not kind of like the moon landing. The moon landing, I think that's all a lie.
Yes, that was all a lie. Can I ask you something? Change the subject back to pyramids. Have you ever thought of actually visiting an American pyramid?
Funny you should mention that. There was a time, 2 decades ago, that I was in Kankakee, Illinois. Now, I've never been there before that, and never been there since. But I was there, and my friend said, "Hey, do you want to go see the mounds?" And I said, "What's a mound?" She said, "It's a big pile of dirt. They're maybe 2-3 miles away." It's kind of like if I was at your house and you said, "You want to go see Salisbury Hill?" And I said, "What's Salisbury Hill?" And you said, "It's a big pile of dirt right down the corner." I said, "Nah, I don't really want to go see a big pile of dirt." Here I am, a decade too later, and I'm like, wait, that big pile of dirt isn't just a big pile of dirt. It's a 450-foot pile. Well, actually, those ones are about 300 feet. It's a 300-foot pile of dirt that has different levels of elevation and are in squared and rectangular formats, designs. It's not just a pile of dirt. It's somebody undersold it a little there.
Well,
Hey,
that's the problem that we've got here because they've made Silbury Hill as just a piece of dirt.
yes, it's a hill. Say, hey, you're in New York. You want to go see the Statue of Liberty? What's the Statue of Liberty? Oh, it's a statue. Nah, I don't want to go see a statue. I've seen plenty of statues. Did I mention that it's like 400 and some feet tall?
Yeah, but I think we've all been in those places. I went to Silbury Hill loads of times. I liked it. I sometimes sat on the top of it on Solstice Day, and I just didn't realise the. Oh, I was going to use now. I can't use that word. I was going to use the wrong word because it doesn't exist. I didn't realise the importance of this thing. But I do now.
Yeah, like I think like the pyramids, that would be something that would be interesting to model, to actually build a replica of it, including the shaft on the inside that doesn't terminate up to the top, and see if like some condensation or something will occur. Nature will do what nature will do, and we may be surprised at what occurs within that structure, and what that you know what that may or may not generate, generate maybe clean water, it may be electric, who knows. That's what I'm saying. We don't haven't really paid attention to what nature would do with the structure, saturated up to its base. How they have the tunnels that come out from the side, which would be dry if they were above the water level where they open. And I think there's something more to it, but again, we don't really. You're told it's a mound of dirt, out of sight, out of mind. You don't really think about it. You don't take the time to, hey, why was this actually built in the configuration it was built?
You're looking for a bit of help, though, aren't you, Angel, with this whole project of yours, really, aren't you?
Well, help or yet, and I have plenty of learning to do. I mean, I can eventually learn CAD. I can eventually get my fingers on a piece of software that will, model the structure in an Earth type environment. But one of the problems is, like I was saying about this Lord Kelvin drip generator, you can physically make one of these things out of a couple of tin cans and a couple of metal rods, and it'll generate a spark. But if you put this same configuration into a CAD situation and turned it on, it won't generate a spark, because the CAD software will only give you answers to what it was told nature will do. Somebody programmed it. They said if a ball hits a wall, it bounces back with an equal and opposite reaction. That's great and wonderful. But what happens if the ball hits the wall and the wall happens to be negatively charged and the ball is positively charged, and it's going to stick to the wall? But if the software wasn't taught about magnetism and stuff, it won't give that result. It will only give the result that it was taught or programmed to give. So while modeling it may give you proof of flow and proof of, that it is a functioning machine, like a waterfall, like a Chinese waterfall or something, it won't necessarily tell you what the end result is, because in nature we have things called tritium. In computer animations we don't, because it's a mystical element that doesn't exist.
So basically, you've got to write a whole new program then.
Well, what I would like to do is show that it does work. Like if I built a motor and showed that when this piston moves, it moves this, moves the shaft, tire, turn, proof that it does work. But what the computer animation doesn't show is that when you run it for 4 hours, the engine melts because it gets too hot. There are things that if it's not told what is occurring, nature will actually have things occur outside of what the computer was programmed. But my goal is to put it into a computer animation and show that it will do work, show that the piston will move, the shaft will turn, the tire will turn. I'm not worried that it will melt and catch fire. That's what real modeling is for. That's what, like a physical model that will show that there's wear and tear and it melts, and that's why we have oil and stuff like that. But the animation will show that piston, gas explodes, piston moves, shaft turns, it is a machine. It is functioning. It does work. Now,
it still
what
works.
it actually does, that is what physical modeling is.
All right, okay. But they still work, don't they, to a degree?
Yes, well, at least the large one would, to this, capture static electricity if we were to take the wooden 4-post antenna off the top.
Take it off.
That shows intelligent design. It either shows intelligent design or oops, we made a mistake.
What?
And I can say, and oops, we made a mistake. I'm sorry?
Take it off or put it on?
Take it off. It's there was a building built out here. I don't live in Los Angeles anymore. There was a Disney Orchestra Center or Disney Music Center. It was Disney Music Center. And when they made it, they made the outside of it into like a wave pattern. And they made it with nice polished metal. And what happened to occur is, on some days, the sun would shine upon the wave pattern and focus energy to the building next door, and was actually like melting people's like desks and chairs and stuff, because it was so hot within the suite that this sun was focused on, that it was acting like a magnifying glass cooking little ants. And now that was an engineering flaw, but it wasn't designed to do that. They didn't want to melt the building next door, but the way they designed it, it was a faux pas, a mistake. I do believe that the way the structures are engineered, that or structures are configured, that it was an engineering design to quarantine the static electricity, not a mistake.
Hmm. How many people think more like you then, Angel?
I don't know.
Yeah, you're still quite a mathematically clever man, though, aren't you? I mean, I watched some of your videos, and yeah.
I do appreciate math. Math doesn't lie. You can make math lie with statistics, but math itself doesn't lie.
Hmm. So you're not ready to build this yet. You just want to build it. You feel you need to still do more research and more things, more
Well,
understanding.
there's a few pieces of the structure I'm not 100% sure of the configuration. We damaged the structure upon entry, and I haven't found the blueprints for those particular locations within the Nazca lines. Soon as I do, then I can, since I believe the Nazca lines are the blueprints for the structure, then I will take the blueprints and model it per the blueprints, because I believe they're the true configuration. But
Do you find it in the Nazca lines then? Is it hidden in the Nazca lines and you haven't found it yet?
well, the Nazca lines do breakouts of different sections of the structure, and it is very detailed. And this is another reason why I would, I almost wish I was on a computer so I could do a screen share and physically show you what I'm talking about. Because again, seeing is believing. I can fabricate things. I can tell you.
You can come
So I
back for
said,
another one and show us, and I'll just make sure that I'm not on this thing and I'm on Google, whatever it is, Google Chrome.
gotcha.
What's the thing that's annoyed you most about the lies with it? Is it frustrating? Because it's a bit like you're going, hello, it's different than you think, and there's all these people still believing whatever they want to believe.
That is true. I have had people tell me of features on the structure that I will take and send them a picture and say, this is the structure you're speaking of. And they'll be like, no, it has this and this and this. I said, no, you're speaking of a structure as told in a story. I'm showing you the physical structure. The picture wins. Your story doesn't. And I have just gotten to the point where people like to tell me of features that they wished to exist that they feel should have existed, and it's very upsetting because they really think they're right, and in their mind they are right, but I don't subscribe to the tomb dogma, and hence when they want to tell me that a feature is there or should be there or used to be there because that's what the tomb dogma says, well, that's great and wonderful. The Christmas gift showed up under your Christmas tree, but I still don't believe Santa dropped it off.
So those big stones that are there, they weren't supposed to be around all the pyramids then, or underneath all the pyramids. Does that change what they were? Because you say one's positive, negative, neutral.
Well, when you say something as you know, undefinitive as those stones,
the big stone. I mean, like some of the, we said there are big stones on the ground, but they're not everywhere. There.
You mean like on the ground, like to walk on, or do you mean just like lying there on the ground?
No, walking on. They're actually like well, not a path exactly,
like
but
a
they're
platform, like a base.
Yeah.
Yes. Like the bottom of the reservoir of water that would be on the outside of the structure.
Oh, I see. So in a sense, they didn't excavate down enough then, really, to uncover it all.
They went down to well, in some areas, I don't know. Again, the area is very large. You're talking about 2 square miles here, and there are areas that they went down to where they have found rock, and that rock is a flat, like it looks like a flat patio, and I believe that is the bottom have been the reservoir or moat of water that surrounded most or all of the structures.
Hmm. They are amazing, though, aren't they? But
They are.
unfortunately, the ones that are asleep don't realise there's loads of them. And if you just see that, it changes everything again, doesn't it? They're in China, they're in
Well,
America, they're in the UK,
that was
Bosnia.
another bubble burster. That was another bubble burster. They like to say that the Great Giza Pyramid is the largest structure that existed prior to the building of the Empire State Building, which happens to be in New York City. However, that's not true. There are pyramids in China that I believe reach 880 feet. They've got a couple of 700-foot ones. Bosnia's pyramid is 720 feet. All of those are like twice the size of the Giza Pyramid. Well, almost twice the size. 451 feet, twice the size would be 900 feet. But I think 880 feet is pretty close to 900 feet. So we're talking twice the size of the structure in Giza. So for someone to say it was the largest structure on the planet or the largest structure on Earth prior to the building of the Empire State Building, that is because, number one, China, up until recently, was kind of like a closed country. We weren't allowed to explore it, and we definitely didn't have airplanes to fly over it and take pictures. Well, maybe Rand did with their B-2 spy planes and stuff, or their U-2, that's what it was. But those pictures and that knowledge wasn't disseminated to the average person. It wasn't until we had Google Earth that people could actually look at this stuff. You could hear about it and maybe see it in an encyclopedia, but for the most part, you didn't know about it. You couldn't find it on your own. And, you know, the fabrication that was the largest structure on Earth prior to the building of the Empire State Building is easily proven a farce. But you're not going to get school teachers to change the book, and you're not going to get the school books to correct the information. They like to perpetuate the lie. They don't really want to change history unless their narrative. They can change the history when they want to say that Edison invented the light bulb. Okay, you can probably ask a dozen kids who invented the light bulb. The first words that are going to come out of their mouths are Edison. That is a blatant lie. Edison didn't invent the light bulb. He improved on the light bulb. He used an inert gas and used tungsten steel so that the filament would last longer and it wouldn't have air, oxygen in there, to allow the metal to burn and oxidize, which would allow it to last longer. Now, he did that because he was a filmmaker, and he actually also did something. They had a Black Maria, which was a film studio that was on wheels, so he could always turn it to use natural sunlight during his filming prior to, his adaptation to the light bulb, which improved on its design. But he didn't invent the light bulb. He also didn't invent electricity. I'd kind of give that to Faraday, and I would also give the current electricity that we use today, give that notoriety to Tesla. But they don't want to give either of those two people really very much notarization, because Tesla wasn't a Mason, and Faraday, I don't believe, was a Mason either. But Benjamin Franklin was a Mason. Benjamin Franklin was a Mason, and so was Thomas Edison. And because of that, they were allowed to disseminate certain information in a controlled fashion, because I currently believe that the knowledge of electricity has been known for a long, long, long time, but they wanted to keep that knowledge pretty much so that it could be used by the nobles and royals and stuff to do what they wanted to do with it, and really not the average person. It was just, why confuse them with those things? Why let them have a way they can electroplate their coin and do counterfeiting? No. They don't need to know that information. Let's keep that out of sight, out of mind. Doesn't exist. And when it does exist, as I've already mentioned, they focus on the macro, not the micro. They focus on like lightning bolts, not static electricity. And another great example of that is I could give you a solar panel cell, that cell phone, in a few hours. if I gave you that same exact solar panel cell a decade ago, you couldn't skiddly with it because you couldn't. That, you know, even your average video game took more electricity than that solar panel could generate. But nowadays, our cell phones use so little power. They use trickle amounts of power that solar cell can easily recharge your cell phone and keep you happy while you're out hiking in the woods for a couple of days. But a decade ago, it wouldn't charge your cell phone because your cell phone took like 600 milliwatts, where now it takes like, a millionth of a watt. I mean, it's the it depends on where in time you are as to what makes sense.
They've
If
made
I
it
gave
sound
you
like we're so futuristic with so much technology, but reality is that we're back engineered, and yeah, we should have had a lot better technology, which they're not going to, well,
well,
publicly at the
we could have had a lot of better technology. I'll give you one little thing as far as cell phones go. There was a company called US Robotics, and they came out with a cell phone called the Palm Pilot. Very cool little thing. And what they had was a charger that you would rest the Palm Pilot on. Wouldn't plug it in, you would rest it on. The same way Starbucks, I don't know if you have them out there, Starbucks has a table where they have like a little circular pattern. And if you have the right type cell phone, if you rest your cell phone on there, it will charge your battery. It's inductive charging without the use of wires. It is an example of wireless energy transmission, wireless electricity transmission. It's on a small scale. They're only doing it over a course of a few inches, but it shows that the technology works and it can be scaled up. But US this, and within a few months of them coming out with it, they were bought by another company and put out of business. They didn't want that technology on the market yet. But when Starbucks did it like half a decade later, it was seen with, open arms.
wow. Yeah. There's loads of things like that. It's a change of subject, but there's this thing called the Rife machine that was invented in the 1800s. And if you get the right frequency for your illness, it cures you through frequencies.
Well, it also can cause rain and or dry.
And then obviously infrared's really good. It's very healing. Does a lot of good. They don't use that, do they? There's so many other things more natural they could have used or less harmful.
Yeah, there's lots of things that can aid someone um, medically, but because it's really not patentable, you can't really patent an infrared light bulb. That you can patent the light bulb, but you can't really patent how it's used. Hence, they don't do here in the States. You have to have what do they call it? Clinical trials. Somebody has to take the time to take 100 people and give them this treatment, and take 100 people and not give them the treatment, and show the difference in results. Well, no one's really going to take the time and energy to pay to do this when they don't have a product that really, once the information is confirmed, they can benefit, because they're not like a pharmaceutical drug where they have the patent on it. You can't have the patent that says if you drink water, there's no patent that says if you like put beer in your hair, it'll help your hair be healthy. You can't patent these things. So no one's going to take the time to invest in clinical trials for months and months and months to prove that it works. But that doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means that they haven't done clinical trials, and hence our FDA won't approve it. And since they won't approve it, doctors can't prescribe it, because you can't prescribe something that hasn't been proven to work. Otherwise, you're doing hocus pocus and what do they call it? You're just quackery. You know, they just,
What
hey, you
magic?
can't do that. You can't.
It seems like
Huh?
magic.
Right. You know, but many things work, and they're proven to. I mean, colloidal silver is an antimicrobial, antibacterial. They put it in emergency gels right now, like the boo boo cream and stuff like that, and pain cream and burn cream. They've started to do that. Oh, hang on, analog phone ringing. They've started to do that because it actually works, but it's not like the knowledge has been around for a long time, but it's been ignored. Is my problem.
Yeah, well, that's the
But that
case.
doesn't mean it doesn't work.
Even like the pyramids. So they're telling us the truth and getting on with it, and just giving us more and more information. You know, like, look, the information grew, the truth grew. They've just lied about everything instead, covered everything up.
Mm-hmm.
Angel, have you enjoyed your move, by the way?
How to what?
Have you enjoyed moving? Because you were in Arizona.
Well, I didn't enjoy moving. Um, I was actually in California, but I didn't
Yeah,
enjoy
sorry.
moving. There are many things about California that I enjoyed. There are many things about California that I do enjoy. I'm really not looking forward to feet of snow, but I'm going to have it in a few months here. Um, it it was a necessary evil.
Is it as hot in the summer where you are now to where you were, or is it cooler? I can't remember where you
It's moisture. I'm in a more moist zone, very trees and canopy and moisture and mosquitoes. In California, it's a desert, so it's a little bit drier. It's not as dry as Nevada and Arizona, but the temperature is drier, so you're not muggy and sticky.
So you're living with grass and trees now. Grass.
Yes. I live in like well, Pennsylvania means William Penn's woods. Sylvania is woods in some language. So it was named after William Penn, the guy who technically owned the state before it became a state, and hence it's Penn's Woods. It's very woodsy, trees and deer and raccoons and stuff.
What does your mum make of all this stuff that you do, flat Earth and the pyramids? What does she make of it all?
Well, I think at first she was a little bit. My son's gone off the deep edge, but luckily we have photos of infrared photography at 1,200 miles, and we've got the P900s taking pictures of 300 and 400-mile photos, and just certain things are kind of like, again, follow the facts. Let the facts tell the story, not the story dictate the facts.
Very interesting, all that infrared stuff.
I actually one of the forest fires. I showed my mother the 5,300 kilowatt or 53 kilowatt laser that my military developed, and I said, "Look what this is able to do. Here are the forest fires in California. See how this house is melted, but the trees next door to it aren't? See how this car has aluminum wheels, and the aluminum wheels are in a puddle underneath it? Forest fires don't do this."
No. It's amazing how many people don't realise or see it, isn't it, really? And they just believe what they're told.
Well, again, because they don't research it. If you're told Santa Claus exists and you don't research it and nothing bursts your bubble, you're going to believe that until somebody says, Santa Claus doesn't really exist. And you'll be like, "What are you talking about? I've gotten presents from him every year." I'm like, Santa Claus is your mom and dad. What? Look in the closet. Look in their bedroom closet the day before Christmas, and those packages will mysteriously be in there. The next morning, they're going to be under the tree.
Party pooper, you.
Well, I'm sorry. It's just I don't really like perpetuating the lie. And I think part of the reason that we have Christmas is to teach parents how to deceive their children with a straight face. And that you can say it's for a noble cause. It makes them happy, blah, blah, blah.
We
But
said
you are
this
still
one
being...
day, the first people to lie to the children are the mothers. You know, we're pretending to tell our children, Father Christmas comes.
Yeah, or the tooth fairy.
So, yeah.
Easter bunny.
Isn't it really, Easter? Sorry, it's a religious day for many people, but it's a piece of chocolate. It's a piece of money.
Well, it's Ishtar Day. It's to celebrate the goddess Ishtar, which actually would come down and, well, supposedly come down and slaughter the children, which is why you dye the eggs. They used to be in red because it was representative of the blood, and there's a whole bunch of other things going on. It's a pagan holiday, but our Roman Catholic Church decided they wanted to diminish the pagan holidays by putting their holidays on top of them and taking the celebrations of the pagan holiday and incorporating them into their holidays, even though it makes no sense, no reason. You know, we believe it. And when you try to explain that to people, they at first they don't want to hear it until you show them it. There are things in the Bible where it talks about Tammuz and slaughtering of the children and stuff like that. And it is Easter, but it is the pagan holiday. They tell you of it in the Bible. But you look at that and you say, oh, look, it's a pagan holiday. And then you look at Easter and you're like, wow, it's the same holiday. but now it's because Christ was born and blah, blah, blah. No, it's the same holiday. We just relabeled some of the things and changed some of the facts, but it's the same holiday.
Yeah, I think that they like doing it. Someone came on a hangout a few weeks ago and said something about, well, flat earth is new. And I was thinking, oh, but it isn't. It was something that we used to live by. And basically it disappeared in the late 1990s on any kind of documents and internet that we had. And yeah, and so it's been missing for a couple of generations. So it looks new when it isn't. This is what they've done to it all with the pyramids and everything. This is why it's so hard to go back, because they've cut it all off. I pretend, a couple of generations later, no one knows what it is or even knows it's happened.
I agree with that part.
Do you agree with me? Yeah, unfortunately. Angel, we've been talking for a couple of hours. I don't know how long you want to talk for. Do you want to carry on a bit longer, or because it's quite tiring talking, isn't it?
Well, I actually kind of need to get back to the subject I was working on before we went live. So if you want to end it, I want to make sure that they got everything they needed.
Oh yes, okay, yes, a domestic. Yes, I remember you telling me. Yeah, so do I.
Otherwise, I have to get in my car and go rescue somebody.
Hey, it's been a really, really nice time. I've really missed you, with you moving. If people don't know, in the chat room, Angel used to come on a lot more, and we used to do quite a lot about pyramids on a Sunday. But then he spent weeks packing to move, and then he moved, and now he's got a few other things that he's doing. But it's always great to have a hangout with you, Angel.
No problem. We can try it again sometime. Have a good day and stay flat.
Yeah, well, do you want to, if we say goodbye off air and then we say, on air and then we say goodbye off air, is that okay?
Yes. Yeah, that's always the way it is.
Thank you, everybody in the chat room. It's been a really great talk with Angel. I hope everybody's enjoyed it. And we're back tomorrow with Iron Realm Media and Roxanne. Anyway, to everybody in the chat room. Thank you, everybody listening. To Patricia. Patricia's there. Patricia?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hello, my darling. Did you
Don't sound so enthusiastic.
I know. I'd just like to say I love you all, and I love you, Angel. Thank you for that. Really good.
Yeah, it
No
was.
problem.
And thank you, Patricia. Mwah. Thank you, Angel. Mwah. And chat room again. Mwah. See you tomorrow. Bye, everyone.
Bye.